So a lot of us are familiar with the Battle of Earth as depicted in Halo. Covenant forces arrive on humanity's homeworld and start devastating the city of New Mombasa. But the Battle of Earth didn't just take place in Eastern Africa, so I figured today we'll take a look at the rest of the Earth during the Battle of Earth. I'm Colin, and this is Sci-Fi Deep Dive. Remember, if you enjoyed this video, to head down below and hit that subscribe button. So now, I know we're all very familiar with the Battle of Earth, and I know I talk about the Battle of Earth a lot on this channel, but this is something that I actually don't see discussed a lot, and that's the Battle of Earth in other places other than East Africa. We see a lot of East Africa during Halo 2 and 3 and ODST, where a majority of the fighting is centered around uncovering the Ark, which is under the city of New Mombasa. And likewise, a lot of attention is given to the battle that occurred in space before the ground engagement, and even a little bit of the battle up there during the ground engagement. But not much attention is given to the battles that took place other places on the Earth. Now, while none of them were nearly as large and as major as the fighting in East Africa, they all still have their own interesting little stories that are definitely worth telling. So let's just jump right into it with something that's vaguely related to the battle in East Africa, and that's the battle in Sector 6. The battle in Sector 6, which is depicted in Halo Landfall, a bit of Halo 3 marketing material, takes place near Pawa on the Afghan-Pakistani border. This is where UNSC forces were attempting to positively identify the Master Chief as he was re-entering Earth's atmosphere following the events of Halo 2. This battle saw a small Covenant contingent attempting to prevent UNSC forces fighting in the area from being able to sort of secure that target lock, which would have seriously hindered the UNSC's ability to recover and put the Master Chief back into combat. This was a relatively small engagement involving a handful of brutes and a few squads of UNSC Marines and ODSTs, ultimately resulting in the UNSC's minor victory here, where they were able to positively identify the Master Chief in the debris field. Another large engagement that occurred on Earth during the Battle of Earth was the Battle of Cleveland. Covenant forces had been led to believe by Colonel Ackerson that a Forerunner artifact was either stored or buried underneath Cleveland. And when the Prophet of Truth arrived in system, they carried out a full-scale assault against the city of Cleveland with the intention of recovering this artifact. After some pretty intense ground fighting, the Covenant came to realize that this artifact didn't exist, that they were being led on a wild goose chase by a rather wily UNSC officer who had fallen into their custody. Ultimately, a CSS-class battlecruiser, the Harbinger of Piety, was lost in this assault, and the UNSC could claim a vague victory, having successfully sort of misled the Covenant and managed to take out a Covenant cruiser. Another major battlefield on Earth during the Battle of Earth was Havana, Cuba. We see the Covenant carry out a fairly large assault against Havana with the assumed goal of disabling the space elevator there. While the Covenant were able to eventually capture and maintain control of the space elevator in Havana for a short period of time, the space elevator was eventually liberated by a UNSC force led by Blue Team, a team of Spartan 2s, and a large Marine contingent. We do know at the end of the Battle of Havana that nearly all Covenant forces in the vicinity of the space elevator were destroyed, but unfortunately, in the fighting, so was the space elevator. Really, who could claim victory is up in the air for this one, because the Covenant did succeed in taking the space elevator out of action, but appear to have lost nearly all of their forces in the engagement. The Covenant also assaulted a location known as Ross Island, which is in Antarctica, which, unlike every other location on this list, is pretty barren. There wasn't really much along the lines of human infrastructure there. The Covenant were searching for a Forerunner artifact of unknown origin, and ultimately it sounds like they never got it, with UNSC forces being able to ultimately neutralize the Covenant excavation site. And there is one more thing that's a little bit of an awkward outlier, but we do know that the last Covenant forces to be driven off the planet were located not in Africa, but in Arizona. A lot of Covenant forces fighting in the region and in that half of the Earth, likely in the battles of Cleveland and Savannah, had retreated to Arizona where they'd set up a staging ground and sort of built a small fortress, sort of a last stand. Ultimately, they would be destroyed when the UNSC would utilize a nuclear device to simply vaporize the staging area and render Covenant forces in the area ineffective. So it's understandable that a lot of us are really just familiar with New Mombasa because that's what we see on screen and that's what we see in the Halo games, but there really is a lot more to this battle than just that very narrow perspective. Still, the Battle of Earth is a fascinating topic. I talk about it a lot, and if you want to learn about the fleet utilized by the UNSC to defend Earth at the start of this battle, I'll leave a link up here to my video on that. And I want you to let me know what you think of the Covenant's list of targets when they assaulted Earth. Does it seem kind of random to you? Like, to me, Cleveland and Havana seem like weird targets. I kind of understand Cleveland, but Havana doesn't make much sense. And if you have anything you'd like to see me cover in Halo, leave it down below in the comments. And last but not least, if you enjoyed this video, head down below, hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell icon so you get notified when I upload new videos. So for Sci-Fi Deep Dive, I'm Colin, and I will see you next time.